The zoo was silent for a moment that felt like eternity. A baby had slipped, tumbling down into the gorilla enclosure. Gasps echoed through the crowd. As fear gripped every heart, the giant creature turned slowly, its deep eyes locking onto the child. People screamed. Guards froze, everyone expecting the worst. But what happened next defied everything they thought they knew. The gorilla approached, her massive hands trembling in uncertainty. Instead of harm, she reached down with the gentleness of a mother. She lifted the crying baby, cradling him against her chest. The crowd fell silent. Even the wind seemed to stop moving. In those eyes was not rage, but an ocean of quiet empathy. Tears began to fall, not from fear anymore, but awe. It was as if the world itself had paused to witness compassion. The gorilla rocked the baby slowly, keeping him safe from harm. Every breath she took was filled with something almost human. When rescuers approached, she didn't roar. She stepped back softly. She looked one last time at the child, her gaze heavy with emotion. That moment became a symbol of love that transcends species. A mother's heart, whether human or not, beats the same. And that day, the world saw it in the arms of a gorilla. It happened in the blink of an eye. A mother's scream cut through the calm air. Her baby had slipped from her arms. Falling below the railing, gasps erupted as the little body hit the dirt. Inside the gorilla's cage, people pressed against the glass, too shocked to move. The gorilla turned, slow and powerful, every muscle alive. Her deep eyes found the baby lying helpless among fruit peels. For a moment, the world forgot how to breathe. A zookeeper shouted orders no one could follow. Children cried. Cameras shook. The air thickened with terror. Then the gorilla took a single step forward. Every person expected violence, instinct, or chaos. But her face held something. Softer, her nostrils flared, as if she recognized innocence. She knelt down beside the crying baby. Her hand hovered, enormous, trembling, uncertain. The crowd braced for the unthinkable, and then she touched his tiny back with unbelievable gentleness. The baby stopped crying, and the silence that followed was the loudest sound of all. The gorilla leaned closer, her breath brushing the baby's hair. She lifted him carefully, supporting his head like a mother would. Her eyes darted toward the screaming humans. Above, she didn't understand their fear. She only saw their pain. The baby whimpered once, then rested against her chest. In that instant, the creature's instincts shifted. Something primal, something sacred awakened inside her. She began to hum a low, soothing sound of comfort. The crowd fell still, mesmerized by what they saw. No one dared interrupt this impossible act of tenderness. Guards aimed tranquilizers, but hesitated. No one wanted to harm her now. It wasn't a monster in that cage anymore. It was a mother protecting someone who needed love. She stroked the baby's tiny arm, as if afraid he might break. The baby blinked slowly, his cries fading into sleepy calm around them. Time dissolved. There was only the rhythm of compassion. A creature once feared became the gentlest soul in that moment. And through the bars, hundreds of hearts began to believe again. They were watching, not danger, but devotion, and it changed them forever. People clung to each other, unable to look away. Even those recording forgot to hit the button. Something inside them stirred, an ache too human to describe. Parents held their own, children tighter. A zoo worker whispered, "She's protecting him." Others nodded through tears. Unable to speak, the gorilla sat cross-legged, rocking the baby slowly. Her eyes flicked upward, soft, uncertain, but calm toward her giant hands, once feared, became symbols of care. The zookeeper's radio buzzed with nervous instructions. Still, no one could find the courage to break the moment. Every motion she made seemed sacred, deliberate, and pure. The baby's tiny fingers curled around her fur, and when he smiled, even for a second, hearts shattered. A mother in the crowd sobbed uncontrollably. The guards lowered their weapons. Trembling, they all realized something simple, yet extraordinary. Fear divides, but love, even in a cage, unites. And in those minutes, humanity witnessed itself through an animal. No one who saw that moment would ever forget it. Trainers whispered through radios, trying to find a way. Every move had to be silent. Every sound measured. One wrong step could change everything. But the gorilla seemed to sense what was happening. She turned, slowly walking toward the corner of the enclosure, still holding the baby close. She sat beneath the shadow of a rock. The baby stirred. Clutching her arm gently, the gorilla made a soft sound. Almost like a lullaby, she was protecting him, shielding him from the noise above. Rescuers opened the gate just a crack, hearts pounding. A man stepped in with trembling hands and open arms. The gorilla looked at him, tilting her head as if asking, "Will you keep him safe?" He nodded without speaking, his eyes wet with tears. Then, carefully, she placed the baby near the door. Her hand lingered for a second on his tiny back, and when she let go, it was like the world exhaled at once. The rescuer pulled the baby into his arms. Running for safety, the gorilla didn't chase. She simply watched. Her eyes followed until the child disappeared. Then she sat down quietly, alone again as the baby was carried out. The gorilla stayed where she was. The crowd erupted, cheers mixed with sobs, but the gorilla didn't move. She seemed lost in thought. Her gaze lingered on the empty spot where the baby had been. It was as if she felt both relief and heartbreak. One final look, deep, soulful, full of unspoken meaning. Then she turned her back and walked into the shadows. That image, the gentle giant fading into the dark, became iconic. People called her a hero, a guardian, a mother in disguise. The world shared her story. Millions moved to tears. Some said it was instinct. Others said it was grace. But everyone agreed. Something divine lived in that moment. A reminder that love doesn't ask for language or logic. It just exists, even where we least expect it. The mother of the child later said, "I saw God in her eyes." And perhaps she was right, for that gorilla didn't just save a life. She saved our faith in love, a love beyond cages, beyond species, beyond fear itself. That day, the world learned. Even the wild has a heart. The video spread across the world like wildfire news. Anchors wept on live television as they described the scene. Scientists, priests, and poets all tried to explain what happened, but no explanation could capture the feeling it gave people in classrooms. Children asked if gorillas could love. In homes. Families sat together, watching in silence. For once, the internet wasn't filled with anger. It was filled with awe. Comments poured in from every corner of the planet. People said they'd never seen something so pure, that maybe humanity still had hope after all. The gorilla became a symbol of peace and compassion. Paintings, murals, and songs were made in her name. She had no idea, she simply returned to her quiet life behind bars, but her story had escaped the cage forever. It reached places she would never see, hearts she would never know, and for many, she became the face of silent kindness. The world realized that sometimes salvation comes in fur and strength, not in words, but in simple acts of care. She had done what humans sometimes forget to do, love without fear, and that truth changed countless souls. Weeks later, the child's mother came back to the zoo. Her hands trembled as she approached the enclosure again. She stood behind the glass, whispering words of gratitude. The gorilla looked up, recognizing the familiar scent, the familiar eyes. Their gaze met mother to mother, heart to heart, no words, just silence heavy with understanding. The woman pressed her hand against the glass. The gorilla mirrored her, palm to palm, separated only by inches. Tears streamed down her cheeks, falling freely. "I owe you everything," she whispered softly. The gorilla blinked slowly, her chest rising and falling. It was as if she understood forgiveness and thanks. Both exchanged. Around them, visitors stopped to watch. The air filled with something sacred, invisible yet powerful, a love that didn't belong to any one species. The woman smiled through her tears, whispering, "Thank you, my sister." And for the first time since the fall, she felt peace, because sometimes gratitude needs no language, only hearts that remember, and both of theirs did. Remember, and both of theirs did. The zookeeper, an old man with silver hair, kept a diary. He wrote about that day. Page after page, he confessed he'd been ready to shoot if things went wrong. But when he saw the gorilla hold that baby, his hands refused to move. He wrote, "That was the first time I saw love, pure and wordless." He began visiting her every morning after the incident. She would greet him with soft sounds, as if asking, "How is the child?" He'd smile and whisper, "Safe." Thanks to you, their bond deepened, one built on respect and awe. He stopped seeing her as an animal. He started seeing her as something more, a being of soul. In his journal, he wrote, "She taught me humanity today." Those words became the title of his final note. When he retired, he left the diary at the zoo's museum. Visitors read his story and cried, because through those pages, her heart lived on, and every word reminded the world compassion doesn't need speech, it only needs courage, and she had more of it than most humans ever will. Years passed, but her story never faded. Children grew up hearing it like a bedtime legend. Documentaries replayed the moment 1,000 times, yet every time, it felt brand new, powerful and humbling. The gorilla grew older, her fur turning silver. She would often sit near the same corner where it all happened. Some said she waited. Others said she remembered. Perhaps both were true. Each time a baby's laughter echoed through the zoo, she looked up, her eyes softened, and she would smile in her own quiet way. Tourists brought flowers, leaving them by the enclosure wall. Some prayed. Some simply stood in silence. Her act had united people who never met. It reminded them that love is not human property. It belongs to all who can feel it. And though the years moved on, her story didn't age. It remained untouched, like a timeless miracle, because heroes come in many forms, some with crowns, some with fur, and hers was the softest of them all. Her gentle gaze became a memory, that never stopped shining. Artists painted her face, capturing the kindness in her eyes. Teachers shared her tale to teach. Empathy and grace. Mothers whispered it to their children before sleep. Even strangers online found comfort. In her silent courage, she had become more than a story. She was a symbol of hope. Her kindness outlived her, echoing through every heart it touched. The world she left behind was a little softer because of her, and every time a child laughed, her spirit smiled again, because some hearts never stop protecting, even after goodbye. The morning sun crept gently across the quiet zoo floor. The keeper called her name softly, but she didn't move anymore. Her body rested in peace, eyes half open toward the light. It looked as if she was dreaming of that baby one last time. The same silence filled the air, calm, sacred, and heavy. But this silence carried gratitude instead of fear around her. The world seemed to slow down in mourning. Flowers were placed gently beside her resting place. Tiny toys and baby shoes lay like symbols of love. Visitors knelt, whispering prayers with trembling lips. Even the wind seemed to sigh softly. Through the bars, a golden plaque was fixed with words that broke hearts. The heart that saved another carved. Forever in brass, the story spread again, touching those who never knew her. Children came with tears and smiles, hearing her tale. Parents held their kids closer, reminded of her kindness. The once feared giant had become an eternal guardian, and her cage was no longer a prison. It was a shrine. Years later, the baby she saved returned as a grown man. He stood in silence, the world fading around him, his hand pressed against the cold glass. Over her memory. "Thank you for my life," he whispered, voice breaking softly. A single tear rolled down his cheek and hit the glass below. The keeper watched from afar, eyes wet but full of pride, because love like hers never dies. It only changes form. Her legacy became more than a story. It became a lesson that strength without compassion is nothing but emptiness, that true love speaks no language, wears no label or face, and somewhere beyond the stars, she still watches in peace, guarding the innocent, loving the lost, forever remembered, forever remembered.